Hey all, Steve from GuitarNiche here. Well, on the bench we have a lovely Reverend electric, and it came in for a little connectivity problem, you might say. The client was saying that the output jack is a little sketchy. So as I'm looking at it, I tighten up the outside here, and looking at any bits of corrosion that might be suspect and need to clean it, and hopefully that's all it is, and it's the way it goes. But on further inspection, we get this kind of activity. If you can see this, okay, this is common with less expensive output jacks. So what's happened here is that the pressed sleeve is not married or pressed or tight with the rest of the components anymore, and the whole thing, this whole unit, the collar and everything is turning. So obviously this has become a bad part, questionable part, has to be replaced. So I guess the nature of the video is, how do you replace, for one, how do you diagnose an output jack? Well, we went through the maintenance part of it, and but we did the extra step to determine exactly what the problem is. Now the rest of it is replacing it. So get my handy dandy wrench out here, undo this, keep that aside, put those aside. Those will wind up in the boneyard, because I'm going to put all brand new parts in there. And next, we're going to appease the wiring a little bit, because I don't want, I'd rather have a little bit of room here to work with. I could try to fish it through there, but I don't want to. I want to make sure that anything inside there is not compromised by, things being worked through and perhaps straining some other components. So I'm just going to undo this twist tie a little bit. Keep it in place, pull that through. See, look, now we have all the room in the world. Okay, wonderful thing. And before I continue, I'll put a little sheet down to catch all the ugly, so to speak. And from here, you know what? This is the beauty of having a little extra material to work with. I'm just gonna cut this off here and cut that off there, because why should I unsolder that? The actual connections look like they had been worked with a little bit and getting a little older. I'm just going to use my utility knife here to get rid of some of this insulation, which is pretty straightforward. On my list of things to get, tools that is a wider notch wire stripper. I have a fine one, which does great, and I've been using it for years, but some of these cables can get fairly thick, and having a more robust machine, something with a little bit more capacity, would make a lot of sense now, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm just gonna trim this back. It's number 3 slot on this set, okay, which is a good guess. Bob's your uncle, just like that. Okay, so if I were to see any fibers, or say internal wires still at the end of that, I would re-nip it and stuff like that, but it's all good. All good. And next step is to tin this. I'm not worried about any hairs or anything sticking around or sticking out at the moment. This is simply preparation. Okay, now the fun part. attaching the new jack. This is a Switchcraft jack, and as a matter of, say, anecdotal evidence, I worked on a was it a 59 Gibson Skylark lap steel, which was Carina. It was a Carina body, and it was really, really cool because you're glimpsing a little bit of that Gibson history, which was, I found fascinating. And I actually went through a couple of them. I owned a couple of them. But anyway, the one the last one I had a little noise in the jack, and I took it apart and I looked at it. I go, everything's pretty good, Nick. The solder joints were great and all that. And I looked inside, and there was a green film around the inside of the jack barrel there. And I took some sandpaper and just got in there and worked it around. It came out green, which meant it had done its job in terms of cleaning things properly. And went to check it, and it was gangbusters. It was like full output, no problem. So here's an instrument that was, at the time, that would have been 60 years old. And a little cleaning of the jack input, the actual barrel, and that thing's good for another 40 years, 50 years, 6 years, whatever. Quality parts never go wrong. Never go wrong. And sorry about that. That's the moral of that story. Now, before I continue, we have the ears of the jack are splayed a little bit. Now, if you have the real estate to accommodate these, super. But what I like to do is just bring these in just a little bit, almost to a 90 degree, just so that we don't get any encroachment on the body route here, okay, or the jack route, you might say, because nothing is worse than getting a jack all together and then putting it in, and next thing you know, you can't put the plug in because the receiving end, the actual receiving pin, is binding against the internal wall. So these are the things we have to look forward to try to account for as we move towards repairing these things. Anyway, so how do we know which lug is which? Okay, let me get something. Okay, this will do. Okay, so I've seen this on threads and pages and stuff many times. How do I know which tab is which? Well, it's fairly straightforward. And in doing this, I'm trying to speak to people that don't have a whole lot of soldering skills or electronic skills and stuff like that. If you're intermediate to advanced, this is like, what are you talking about? Everybody? No, not everybody knows about this stuff. You got to learn somehow. So this is the point. So if we look at the center sleeve here, this lug here is directly attached to the center sleeve. That's your negative. And because this is only 2 points, the other one, just by simple elimination, is our positive. Okay? And in terms of our output wire, the center lead will be your positive, and the outer lead is your wrap. That's your negative. So it's a very simple process once you understand it. So, in order to get things moving along, I will see if I can get these wires situated. Sometimes I use a third hand, as it were. But in this instance, I'm trying to keep the video fluid and working in a more, say, intentional fashion here. Okay, so I want good clearance around the outer edge of that. Okay, and another thing that we have to pay attention to is sometimes when you start soldering, If this insulation is too tight to the lug, the solder won't attach to it properly. You won't be able to close the eye, let's say. Okay, and I want some freedom on this. I want the negative lead to be the retainer, the leash, if you would, and the positive to float a little bit more freely, which is good practice. So I'm just going to heat this up and apply a little bit of solder, close that up. Bob's your uncle, as they say. That's done. Let that cool naturally. You don't want to blow on that. Okay. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. That's what she said. Anyway, and then back to the positive lead. We're going to do likewise. Close the eye. As little heat as possible. This keeps our joints as consistent and solid as possible. Let that cool naturally, so we don't get any misting or discoloration, graying of the solder surface. You see that it's done just pretty nicely, and I'm just gonna knock that off. I could have wrapped it around, but too late now. It's all good. That'll hold very nicely. Okay. Anyway, so that's that. So I want to make sure that this doesn't encroach on the center post here. Okay. And the last step is assembling the plate that it works with. Now I got two washers here. Two of these lock washers. By the way, lock washers come in different qualities as well. You want to use reasonably good lock washers. Some of the newer ones are just, pressed metal, pressed steel, and they're soft. They don't grab worth a crap. The black ones, I'm out of stock on them, but the black ones actually do a very good job. And so I got two washers there to bring the plate out to a maximum depth. Sorry. Let's try that again. And then we'll put the nut on. Always trying to keep the throat of the sleeve flush with the nut. And I have the dress washer in there, of course. Makes it look very nice, of course. And give that a good torque with the wrench. And I'd say that's pretty good. I don't think there should be any issue with that. And the rest of the project, or this process, you might say, is simply reversing the disassembly. But before we do that, good practice, before you button anything up, test for success. Always. Well, let's turn that down a little bit. Okay. Alrighty. Well, that needs a little clean. Okay. I think we're good. And that's a bulletproof jack right there. Okay, this will last, probably as long as the instrument. Anyway, that is how you replace an output jack 101. Okay, and some basic soldering skills and troubleshooting, and away you go. So the rest of the job, as I said, is simply putting this back together. It's a no-brainer. Okay, I will test for before I wrap this up, I'll say this. I will put a couple screws in and then insert the jack, make sure that there is no encroachment, as I mentioned. And if there is, I will either turn it 180 degrees, because this is a football type jack, or plate, I should say. Or I might have to loosen it off and turn the actual jack a few degrees to match the any discrepancy in the alignment of the output situation here. Anyway, I'm done. this is a success. Hope you got something out of that. Okay. Again, my name is Steve. This is GuitarNiche. As always, refer to the description below. Lots of good stuff down there. Free resources. Okay. And as always, as I said, play loud, have fun, have a great day. Like and subscribe. Double thumbs up. See ya. Bye.